Hello, everybody. Hopefully, my sound is coming through okay. Those who watch my channel know it is a regular struggle with my live streams. I am Peter, creator and lead designer of Tales from Elsewhere, and here we have another designer that we're going to be interviewing today. I have Samantha with me, the creator of the Spy Game role-playing game, which currently has a Kickstarter running right now. We're in the last few days of it, so that'll be up on my screen, and there is a link down below to that Kickstarter page. As always, we like to put a spotlight on indie creators. So, Samantha, you are a very experienced designer. Would you want to tell us about yourself and what you've been working on?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Samantha Webb. I'm one of the founders of Black Cats Gaming. We're a little trio of artists, like game designers and producers, pretty much in the space. I cut my teeth at Modifius Entertainment, where I still am as a day job as well. So I get to do this twice, I guess. And yeah, mainly project managing, like producing, first of all, tabletop role-playing games, and then over the years have moved about a little bit, and now I'm head of brand, so I work on the marketing and PR side of things over at Modifius Entertainment. But yeah, so like with a colleague, we started up Black Cats Gaming while we were still both at Modifius, and it was kind of like we wanted to make something of our own and kind of like control the process ourselves a little bit more. And so on my commute to and from work, I was just sat on the tube writing the Spy Game, basically.
That's
And we
great.
kind of,
Good use of your time.
yeah,
Yeah.
like really good use of our time. It's producing, like, I think everyone is a little bit of a designer at heart when you're into this kind of industry, into this hobby. And so there was definitely a part of me that was like seeing people kind of send in like writing submissions or drafts and talking about design work and stuff that really kind of made me quite itchy, that like an itch that I wanted to scratch in terms of
I know
that.
what you mean.
Um,
There's that feeling
yeah,
like,
so
I could do it better. I know I can, right? That we all think, like,
yeah,
that's not how I would do it. We think this
yeah,
whenever we read it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Or just an infectiousness of like
Yeah.
wanting to kind of get on it with everyone as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I kind of started working on a spy game because I've always been really interested in like spy fiction. It's been a little favorite genre of mine, and also having played stuff like Spycraft in the past, like I knew that those games existed and were out there, but there was nothing like just coming out contemporary that I knew of that really kind of got the kind of like um, tabletop RPG or D&D but spies kind of mold. So I started working on that. And really, it started with the character classes, really.
Yeah, they communicate so
That's where I started
much,
writing.
right? When you're making a class-based game, the names and the ability names and all that, even if you ignore the mechanics of it, they start communicating a lot. Like one of the classes, and forgive me if I mess up any names as I go through this, but like you have a class that is the face, right? That tells you
Yeah.
immediately so much about who that is. And
Yeah.
we'll dig into some specifics here in a bit. But what I find really interesting about the spy genre is that it contains a lot of subgenres within it as well, like so
Mm.
many things. With me, it's westerns, but even within westerns, there's so much different approaches to it. And so,
Mm.
for your love of the spy genre, like, do you have a favorite spy movie or piece of fiction that you think is a good touch point for the spy game itself?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I think it's really adaptable, honestly. So you can do everything from like really gritty Born Identity kind of things
Yeah,
to just like slinging cocktails at each other, kind of James Bond like fiascos, right?
right.
But I think
Yeah,
that actually I came to the conclusion that I think the kind of like default kind of tone, I guess, in terms of like a movie or something would be Mission Impossible.
mm-hmm. That's what I
Um,
read. Like I could tell the vibe from reading the system that that's the reality bar you were going for, right? This wasn't
yeah, the kind of cinematic reality.
exactly,
Um,
yeah.
but it's good because it's like a team of people who each have their roles. I mean, you've got Ethan Hunt, who's probably a multi-class of a bunch of
Yeah,
things,
he's the
right? And he's probably like pretty
DMPC,
high
right?
up, right?
Yeah, he's higher level than everybody, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. But then, you've got people like his friends who are like gadgeteers,
Yep.
or he'll link up with someone who is more of a kind of like ranger archetype, I guess, who is more about kind of pathfinding and
Yeah, he'll meet a
getting kind of
sniper or
out in the world.
something.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's these
exactly.
different specialties. Yeah, and Ethan Hunt, sort of like James Bond, he's the protagonist of the story, and so he's very multi-skilled, right? Because that's the fantasy that that one character achieves. But you're right, in Mission Impossible, especially in the earlier films within that franchise,
Mm,
before it kind of started to get like really crazy, it was
yeah.
more about the team itself, right, and their
Mm,
coordination. Just like so many
exactly.
franchises, once they're on their like ninth film, right, we start to
Yeah.
the scope gets really big. But it's
Yeah.
juxtaposed with, say, a spy film like Atomic Blonde or Born Identity, where
Yeah.
the scope is so tiny. They're solving one murder sometimes, right? It's just one little
Yeah.
thing. And there's
Yeah.
sometimes a conspiracy there, and there's fights, but they're small and gritty and all that. With Mission Impossible, whole nations are at stake, the world at times, right? It's
Yeah.
there's a epicness, right, to it, a heroicness almost, even though it is a spy story. So cool.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and the mechanics of the game communicated that to me as I read it. Right, it wasn't like Blades in the Dark where it's like super gritty and grounded and noir and
Yeah.
smoky, and everybody's like smoking a cigarette and drinking in the shadows or something. Right, this is very Mission Impossible, very high, not pulpy, but adventure. There's a high adventure to it.
Yeah, like we call it an action and espionage
Like it.
RPG,
Yeah.
right? So
Hmm.
it's got those two things kind of going for it. So the focus really is on a bit like D&D, having been built off 5e.
Yeah.
It transitions between those times when you're kind of more free form, like trying to discover more intel or meeting up with a contact, and it's a little bit more focused on, say, like the skills being used and single dice rolls resolving things. But then
Hmm.
a lot of it really is about kind of getting to like that encounter on the table mapped out, and that's where it starts to lean into, for me, a bit more to Hitman, particularly the
Hmm.
most recent trilogy of those games, where it actually kind of um, becomes a lot more about like the level design and like what the NPCs or like the crowds or whatever are kind of up to, and how they all kind of
Hmm.
interact in that space. So that was definitely an inspiration as well,
Yeah, and
because
I
I'm a
could
big
really
fan of
see
those
that.
games.
So a lot of the chassis of this game, of Spy Game, is D&D 5e. You'll read it and
Mm,
you'll be like, I see the DNA, I see the skeletal structure here, but there are a number of divergences where
hmm
you've clearly identified something that didn't quite mesh with the genre you're trying to evoke. And one that jumped out to me immediately was actually the initiative system, which
mm,
in that you've added a distinct transition between the infiltration and things that we've been discovered, we have to fight our way out kind of thing, or we've got the MacGuffin and have to fight our way out. And that's
mm,
actually a codified phase. Not only is there like you do a briefing, you can do some reconnoiter, but the infiltration mode is side-based initiative, free form. It's still a structure, and you would get out the map of the facility and place like the
yeah,
guard patrols and all of that. And as soon as the jig is up, or somebody gets caught in a camera, right, because there's rules about how you get noticed in this phase,
yeah,
you then move into a more traditional, each player has their own initiative, more every moment, every step matters. And even some classes get features that trigger in the infiltration versus combat phase. I'm forgetting the name, but it was one of the, I think, the rogue-ish archetypes.
yeah. The infiltrator.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay, it was just the infiltrator. Yeah, when that
yeah,
transition
yeah.
happens, they get to like immediately like move. They basically get an action
Mm,
outside of the structure. And so this is a natural transition to talk about what drew you to fifth edition as its skeleton? And then what did you rub up against that, like, nope, can't, I got to break away from this a bit? So you want to start unpacking some of that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, the idea of using fifth edition as a basis for it was like purely kind of business, really. It's the most popular role-playing game out there, and if you build on something that people know, like the genre change is enough of a change for most people to be like, oh, this is something new, I need to get used to it. So if you can just say, well, look, you already know the rules. Like we can just play in
Yeah.
this just different classes and slightly different rules in the margins, then I think people are going to be more on board, and it's an easier sell, I think, for a lot of people
Well, yeah,
in
and
the wider community.
yeah, and when I read the rules, oh, and for clarity, the Kickstarter we're showing here is actually for a supplemental, like you can buy the book already. The core book already
Yeah,
exists. This is more stuff, more subclasses, more GM guidance, so on and so forth. So to be clear, like this game actually already exists, and you can buy it. But what
yeah,
I could tell is that I could plop that book in front of my regular D&D group and play it that night because they wouldn't need to learn anything, right? I mean, the way you approach the game is so similar. We could just address the not discrepancies. That's the wrong term. Address the divergences as they come up,
mm,
right?
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
like
Yeah, I
hacking,
mean,
infiltrating. These things
yeah.
are a little different, but they're painting with a familiar palette, though. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I tried to do really at every single step, as much as I could, was to stay as close to the kind of 5e rule design and structure as possible. So I think maybe like the infiltration phase of being in an encounter map, which is kind of effectively just like a bit of a kind of a conceptual extension, I guess, of like the surprise round,
Yeah.
where you all get to act and then like the NPCs wouldn't, but then like the NPCs just do their thing.
Yeah.
So you as a
Patrol.
team,
Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you as a team have the ability to choose who goes when, in what order, and once that's all resolved, then the NPCs will, yeah, it's the GM's job then at that point to go like take them about their patrol routes or whatever it is they're
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and that
Um,
reinforces the fiction too, because in the classic spy movies, they all can be coordinating perfectly over their little
yeah,
earpieces when it's calm, right?
yeah,
But then
exactly.
once the sirens and klaxons are going off and the guards are coming out with their guns, you have the more chaotic aspect of a traditional initiative structure, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's good that you mentioned like hacking as well, because hacking for me, a lot of its DNA is really just like about spell casting.
Yeah.
It's like picking the right tool, the right spell to use for that thing that you want to do. Um, I'm looking at it again a little bit in the supplement. Yeah, should we fund? And that's what I'm kind of calling like hacking, like Redux. So it's like I
Right.
wanted to kind of look at it again, because I think what I found from not necessarily the play tests that we did at the time of kind of developing it and stuff, and playing it on stream with people, but more about kind of playing it with home groups and hearing about feedback. There's definitely like a bit of a disconnect, even though like it's basically spells. It's basically you're a wizard and you're spell casting, but with
Right. Yeah. I
computers,
get
right?
you.
There's a kind of a disconnect, I think, for people, because there's that mental jump that you have to make of like, okay, well, if I'm firing a fireball at somebody, I know that it's just them and I can just shoot them, and that's
Right.
kind of easy. But it's like, okay, but it's computer to computer. Am I connected? How do I know what's on their hard drive? Like there are some. It depends what you want to do with hacking at your table, I think, really. I've played it fast and loose before, where I can just like, you can connect to anything and you can do anything. And so really some of the hacking tools become a little bit redundant if you're playing really fast and loose with
Right.
the realities of the situation, and you're kind of giving them a lot of artistic license to just connect to things and see data and find information or corrupt the operating system or whatever. But if you drill down into the rules, it's like, okay, well, okay, you can see a laptop over there, but how are you going to connect to it?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
either there's got to be a way for you to do that, and there are tools for you to do that, but you might not have access to all of them.
Right, because it's a contemporary reality bar. It's the reality bar of Mission Impossible, really, like where
Yeah,
it's modern, but with a little bit of license taken for certain things, right?
yeah,
Like that
absolutely.
sort of like within the next 10 years, some of this technology would be pretty reasonable type of idea. But we're
Yeah.
not, in the year 2100, or we're not going back to Cold War era or something like that, right? It's
No,
very contemporary.
exactly. Like the original game, it was very much pitched as like it's tomorrow is the idea
Right.
of the kind of setting, right? It's where things were just that little bit ahead. And it's funnily enough now, it's like actually it's probably set now. Like
Right, because the
the
original
original Spy
was
game.
in
It was
2019.
2020. Oh yeah, in
2020. Okay.
2019 we funded, 2020 I was designing, and 2021 I think we fulfilled.
Gotcha.
So it was like, yeah, so it's definitely, and some of the stuff that I was doing, putting together a streamed campaign called Hexcrawl that we did on our YouTube channel.
Hmm.
Black Cats Gaming is just
Yeah.
the tag for the YouTube channel. But on there, like on the campaign, it was about stuff like, surveillance capitalism, and like you have to take your phone has everything. And it's like now in the UK, we're talking about like digital like identification and all that kind of stuff that you would just have on your phone, right? So
Yeah, yeah. It
I
happens
guess it's
fast.
set now, yeah.
Well, I mean, even in I'm a big Star Trek fan. Even in the Next Generation, back in the day, they walked around with tablets, basically touchscreen tablets, before that had been concepted in technology, right? The idea of touchscreens, and just fast forward well, I guess it's not a handful of years. I am old, but fast forward 20 years, and those were now everywhere, right? So it's funny how quickly sometimes it catches up with you when you're designing. But yeah, I
Yeah,
like that
definitely.
way to phrase it though. It's tomorrow. That's very evocative, right, and communicates plenty. Yeah, I dig it. So hacking is kind of like spellcasting, but I also noticed that it's almost like a mini game, is how I might describe it. In that
Yeah.
there's subsystems that hackers have to contend with, firewalls and
Mhm.
defenses, almost like combat, right? So
Yeah.
the hacker isn't playing an inferior version of the game when they go hack something, right? They could be the what is it, the guy in the room, they're just sitting there typing, but could actually
Yeah.
still be having an engaging play experience instead of just I cast fireball and we end the conversation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, funnily enough, one of the subclasses, the archetypes for hacker that's in the Spymaster's toolkit that we're funding at the moment. Oh my god, my cat.
Yeah, kitty. I have to close my
One
door, or
of
my dog that's the size of a cat will come in and start complaining for snacks. So,
This is one of the black hats from Black Hats
ah,
Gaming. Um, but one of the subclasses for the hacker is the operator, and
hmm,
so that is absolutely like the guy in the van, like
love
off-site
it.
location, coordinating the team,
I'm
giving
in.
them kind of intel and exactly right,
Yeah,
giving them intel, leaving them little weapon caches and stuff that they can pick up on scene. And so really the kind of like coordinator kind of role,
I love that. Yeah, I love playing
Um,
those kinds of characters, and it's rare for games to actually support them. Usually, you
yeah.
have to be somebody who's boots on the ground to contribute, and so that's very cool to have that
Yeah.
role because it's a classic of the genre, right?
Well, exactly, yeah, and we didn't, yeah, didn't include it originally in the game, and it was always one that I think like it's probably one of the first subclasses that kind of came to mind when we were thinking about an expansion,
Right.
and so that's kind of what I think like spurred us on to like get writing for it.
Yeah, yeah, I like that. Well, and it's an example of so when you're designing a game, you can make something that is somewhat generic in its setting or vibe, right? And I would actually argue that fifth edition D&D is actually quite generic in its setting, right? It's
Mm.
sort of an open kitchen sink fantasy. It doesn't have direct genre evocation. But when you're doing something like a Mission Impossible era spy game, you get so many cool evocations you get to support, like the guy in the van, right? You tell that to
Yeah,
anybody who's going to sit down for a game of the session of this game, and they're like, I get it immediately in a
yeah,
way that is less nebulous than more open-ended or less genre specifics to it. Oh, and I just see one of the comments was loving the D20 modern style of the game and its sort of appearances. And I'm back in the day, I remember really liking D20 modern, which kind
Mm,
of like Spy Game is attempting to take that structure and apply it to a modern one.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that was
exactly.
definitely an inspiration too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. And Levy mode, yeah, exactly. And instantly identifiable genres and settings. Yeah, it really helps. Also, that there's really good art, of course. And this is the base game. This is reminds me of Sam Fisher. Was that the character from Splinter Cell?
Yeah.
Okay, it
Yeah.
immediately evokes that kind of character, which
Yeah.
brings me actually to a design question I had for you
Hmm.
on this. So some of the classes are fairly combat focused, not surprisingly.
Hmm.
Like you can be the character that knows kung fu and takes
Yeah.
people down, right? You can be that character. But what I really liked and noticed and want to unpack is that some of the subclasses and classes, like you need to scroll up to the face again, have so much support for not combat, and it's
Yeah.
something that fifth edition D&D has kind of not supported a lot, I would say, in its class
Hmm.
features. Most of them are about violence, in like direct violent exchange, because that's the fantasy it's
Yeah.
going for, right? It's about
Yeah.
slaying dragons, beating up goblins, or what
Yeah.
have you. But I was drawn to the face character immediately because it looked like the vast majority of these features are not for hurting people directly. And
Mm.
so I wanted to ask, was it challenging to come up with classes like the face, which really do divert from D&D's classic structure? Do you want to maybe talk about your process for that?
Yeah, I didn't actually find it that difficult to, come up with class features that are about kind of what you do outside of combat. And the face is probably my favorite class, also to have designed for. And so like what I find particularly about the kind of class features, and I think the way that D&D has kind of evolved either subconsciously or kind of they've done this kind of self knowingly, that I think you can definitely have a couple of different types of role players when it comes to these kind of games, and D&D really lends itself to the kind of prescriptive style of
Mm,
like rules design and rules writing, where it's a bit like the default is that the game tells me what I can do,
mm, mm,
and then that's what I will apply to the situation. And then there are games that are much more freeform and much more like, here are the like approaches or the kind of attributes that you have that you can apply to kind of anything, and it's about your imagination and what you want to do in the scene at that moment that really decides kind of what you can do. And so I think kind of knowing that and understanding that going in, the way that I designed the class features that weren't necessarily about combat or were more focused on like the face, where you bring mechanics into a kind of situation. um, it was more about giving the players permission to do that thing explicitly,
mm.
um, as opposed to thinking that they will just implicitly know about spycraft and therefore they'll apply that knowledge to the
Right.
situations and the rules, right? So like one of the early class features for face is about the theme, and
Mm,
a
hmm.
theme is something in real world spycraft where theme is basically like establishing like a vibe that's like a
Yeah.
disguise, right? So a really obvious one could be like a tourist. Like you could pretend to be a tourist pretty easily in a city that
Yeah.
you don't know, right? And so that is something that arguably any of the agents in the spy game should do and should be able to do. um, but our players might not necessarily think of that, and so the
Hmm.
face kind of calls it out and gives it explicit mechanics and therefore like a little beneficial bonus as well for you. But really kind of applying those bonuses and stuff like that really is about designing the vibes of the class and like how they would approach problems, and giving the players permission to do those things.
Yeah, that's a really good way to phrase it because even just looking at the names of the features, like we kind of talked about at the start, gives you a download of your genre right away. If I look at the face and I get cover identities at level 1, that immediately is telling me, even if I'm not very familiar with spycraft or the genre, like, oh, cool, I can get disguises. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have these alternative identities I could use, and I get more of them as I play. And you're right, you know, anybody could put on a wig and a fake mustache or something, right? And
Yeah.
but this
And you can
character,
literally buy cover
yeah,
identities in like the equipment list.
right. With the face, though, this is yours, and I believe it's said in the rules, like, and it's effectively infallible, right? Like, that's a
Yeah.
full
It's
person.
a real identity.
Yeah,
Like you live it as well as this identity.
yeah, and I love the idea of the role playing that would facilitate too, as you attempt to maintain that cover identity. If you have like a day job or like a family or something weird, right? You know, you could have
Yeah.
it's nudging the player as they sit down and look at the paper. You know, here's
Yeah.
stories that we could
Exactly.
tell with it in a way that leaving it fully open ended wouldn't necessarily facilitate with somebody. Now you sit down with genre experts, and you almost don't even need the dice at that point, right? You could tell stories of spycraft
Yeah.
all day, but
Yeah.
the structure grounds that and communicates expectations very clearly.
Yeah, exactly. And that's more important, like lower down the level,
Mm-hmm.
um, than it is like higher up. And because these kind of class features and like they all kind of set a foundation of like how the class works, but also like how it's telling you how it should approach problems.
Right.
And so making sure that those are evocative, but also like set a foundation of how then you might build on them later with other class features
Yep.
is like really important. Um, so like, you know, some of the new class feature, some of the new archetypes have been coming up with really are, you know, they might not be very punchy features at low level, but they really establish like how you, and you're going to use them over and over and over again.
Right.
So like for the infiltrator archetypes, we've got a free runner as one of the
Oh, fun.
subclasses. So that's, you know, blah, about like parkour, free
Yep.
running, and it's kind of a sport kind of vibe. And I'm using second story work again from Thief, but that's
Right.
because that's exactly what it needs to do. And then
Yep.
as well at third level, like tumble lets you essentially take less falling damage because you're able to compensate for that kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
So you're not big and punchy and necessarily, you know, amazingly evocative, but really set a kind of firm foundation. But I think in terms of like putting across a vibe and like evoking things, I've definitely kind of lent into that a little bit more with the subclasses of like the new subclasses for the
Fun.
Spymaster's Toolkit. I think my favorite is of in that sense is probably the Backroom Doctor.
Ooh, that I mean I know what like that hits me with genre immediately. Yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah, exactly. So that is, you know, the medic, the doctor that like you go to in a pinch that, you know, probably had a license at some point, but has probably seen more blood than like any like ER doctor
Yep.
going. But some of these where it's just like, you know, improvised tools is about like just being able to like put together your own surgeon's tools, like in a pinch, just with like knives and and bits of clothing and like makeshift implements
Yeah.
in order to do that. Really kind of again sets the tone, sets the way that the class works, and then stuff like walk it off, which
Yeah.
basically just helps your comrades with their second wind actions. Not
Yeah.
on my table is probably my favorite.
Oh, that's great.
Not on my table. Mechanically, it just reduces your DC to resuscitate a patient.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that
But just
whole
the
like not on
word.
my table, you're
Yeah.
not dying here because then it's going to cost me a lot more in
Yep.
terms of like heat and like money and like effort to like dispose of the body. So
Yeah.
you're not dying here, and it's just
And that's
very kind
always
of
in the
like
movies, right? You know, it's always, no, we can't go
yeah,
to the hospital. Like, I need to go to the hospital. We can't take you
yeah,
to a hospital. I know a guy. Right.
exactly. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
great. And I'm going to probably say this more than once during this interview. That's why I love genre heavy games,
yeah. Mm.
because as a fan of film and books and just genre in general, I can sign up so hard when there's really obvious genre, right? I cite it frequently. When I was pitched playing in a Brindlewood Bay session, and I was told, well, what's this
Yeah.
game? Well, you're, Jessica Fletcher from Murder She Wrote, a group of old ladies solving cozy eldritch mysteries in New England. I said, I am so there for this, right? The genre
Yeah.
download fast tracks a player into understanding the type of game they're going to be playing and the expectations, really, of what the experiences will be and how they should act, right? So, big fan of that. Uh, yeah, the face, you said the face was your favorite. And when I read the rule book, I was also like, this is probably my favorite too. I often like playing basic human warrior sword and shield in fantasy games.
Yeah.
But for a spy game, when I read I believe capstone abilities in a game like D&D should make you excited, right? The level 20 feature. And when I read
Yeah.
Master of Disguise, where I could just be like switching identities, when combined with things like quick change, right? The
Yeah.
whole that your basic guards and such, basic folk are not gonna. You don't even have to roll, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That's such a cool character to quick change between outfits and personas, and that's a level 20 Master of Disguise, right? A true chameleon in that way. So that's very cool stuff. Yeah, and I think it's one of the classes that probably is most different in its design from what you'd expect from a heroic fantasy role playing game, right?
Yeah. And it was definitely the one that had the most original design
Hmm,
work and like writing behind it. Because again, like I said, one of the key things for me about the design work was really not straying too far from 5e
yeah,
if I didn't need to. So, the infiltrator like is the rogue
yeah,
basically. There's a couple of tweaks to what they do just to kind of fit the genre, but you could effectively like pretty much know the class features and how that class works from knowing that. And like, martial artist is a straight port from monk, because it
yeah,
works, well. And in terms of our understanding, I guess, of the kind of role in fiction of the monk or the martial
yeah,
artist, like it hasn't changed in a good few, probably 100 years or so. So like
yeah.
that was very easy to just kind of port over.
Well, yeah, and
Um,
even with the infiltrator, which is the rogue, we would say, there's a lot of familiar things. There's a few key like differences that I like. I saw they had a sleeper hold. It's a small thing
yeah,
to give them, but I'm like, that's perfect, right? Classic stuff. Come up behind somebody and they get him in the sleeper hold. Where rogues in D&D in general have often struggled to be non-lethal, right? To take somebody
yeah,
down, rules as written. There's the whole if they're reduced to zero, you could say you knock them out, but that doesn't quite have the genre. Like it's not evoking the idea of putting them in the sleeper hold. Shh. Putting
yeah.
them to sleep as you sneak in. During potentially even the infiltration phase, right? Doing that kind of thing to avoid
Yeah, and
detection.
like all these actions are applicable to the infiltration phase as
Hmm.
well, where,
Yeah,
the enemy don't know that you're there necessarily. And so, you know, even before they've taken a turn, you can be at them and like taking them out,
yeah,
just incapacitating them, in order to get all the way. And so, yeah, there was definitely, in terms of thinking about all of that, with all of the kind of initiative stuff built in as well, that there's a real, I call it like, there's always a tipping point. Like there's always the turn in, particularly in the gaming
yeah,
part of this fiction.
hmm,
But like I feel like there's always that when like the guards realize you're there, or like someone gets the drop on you, or they make you like, there's always that
yep,
moment where it's all been going to plan and then one thing goes wrong and then it all kicks off. So
yeah,
like you have to, like, again, so you go to initiative, now you're in a fight, now you're in conflict, now you have to figure that out. um and of course, like, it means that you can make different approaches to that, and like video games often invite you to do, like, where it's like, well, you can go the stealthy option, or you can just go in guns blazing. um or a lot of the time, um, classes like the face tend to kind of set up those situations where it's not
right,
quite either, but they are going in and it's still quite free form in its play. but they're going, okay, well, I'm just like, I've got these cover identities and I've got these disguises, like I'm just going to go in and try and dupe them, I guess. And that often ends up with a tipping point anyway.
Yeah, just like in most role playing games, right? The best laid plans of the players, they come to pieces so fast. They'll spend an hour trying to think of a plan, and then chaos ensues. Or like my party, we encounter a door, and the door we spend far too long trying to figure out how to get through.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like in the movies, in these genres, there's a fight your way out, fight your way to extraction in some
Yeah.
level, and
Yeah.
and I've noticed that kind of shifting gears now. Oh, and before I keep talking, for anybody watching this live, if you have questions, feel free to put them in chat. We're just kind of free flowing this. This isn't a script, right? A set number of questions. So if you do have things you'd like to ask about from Samantha, please post them. So looking at the, it's not the monsters, of course. It's the foes, the adversaries,
Yeah.
and playing around with that idea of fifth edition as your base. Were there challenges in threat design, in villain design that you encountered, and what were your solutions to them? How did you approach threat design? Kind of let's talk monsters.
Yeah. Yeah. James laid the kind of foundation for the NPC design. And of course, like one of the main things that we have to kind of consider is that the vast majority of those foes are just going to be like human people.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a guy
but
with a cat, you know.
yeah, yeah. But then the other thing really was in terms of the kind of weapons that I was statting up and designing. And kind of we were figuring out what maybe those kind of final like dice amounts would be and all that kind
Mm-hmm.
of stuff for damage and that. But our philosophy was really kind of that like firearms really are, and I think there's even a sidebar in the book about this, that like firearms really are that kind of like complete like leveler when it comes to combat. Because you could have like an idiot with one bullet kill somebody, and then you could have
Yeah,
a professional try really hard and not. So like it can be a real leveler, and that's kind of reflected in the damage as well. So we had to be quite conscious, really, of how we like rated their effectively. Not we kind of didn't go with challenge rating, but like how we
like
rated
the
their threat level.
difficulty. Yeah, I think it was was it the
Yeah,
difficulty? Yeah.
if it is actually, yeah, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And then basing that not only on like their own abilities, which I find really doesn't factor in as much, but it's really about kind of like the damage that they can deal and how much damage they can deal, which is still kind of based around the CR type stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, really like working with James on it, the kind of thing we found about the design, particularly around like the way that I'd established how player characters are like tracking their reloads, and there are a certain number of attacks that a weapon can make. So we're not down to
Sure.
like bullet counting, but like we're almost there
Yeah,
in the
not
kind
that
of default.
simulationist. Yeah, not quite.
Yeah, yeah,
You're
in that
not
kind of
rolling for
default.
sepsis if people get a bullet wound and it gets infected, right?
No,
It's not,
no,
yeah, not like that.
no.
Yeah.
But we're almost there with kind of with ammo. And so as kind of initially we were looking at that and thinking like, okay, well, GMs may have to track that kind of thing and this, that, and the other. And then of course realized that like there is already something built into 5e which kind of limits what like NPCs or monsters can do, like how often. So they've got recharging abilities, right,
Sure.
on a 5 or a 6. So a lot of the stuff that you can do with, say, a semi-auto or fully automatic weapon as a player character is more based on a kind of a recharge thing with NPCs. So
Like some of them can like open
where the kind of
fire on a
burst
huge area.
fire
Yeah, yeah.
or the full auto, the kind of area of effect stuff that
Yep.
we gave to some of the guns. Yeah, they can only do like effectively once in an encounter, or they can do it on a recharge roll,
Yeah.
basically.
Because a single threat, single villain won't live usually more than like 3 or 4 rounds anyway, right? In general.
Yeah.
And so they have a few big moments they can do, right? And it's okay that they don't do it every turn, because then it's not actually all that exciting, right? It's just, oh, he's opening fire on the
Yeah.
whole room again, right? It's
Yeah,
not quite like that. You
exactly.
want those little spikes of action,
Yeah.
action in it. Yeah. Well, it definitely, like D&D, we have a stratification of these threats that they can encounter, because you could, at low levels, when the agents, the players, are first starting out, they might encounter recruits, right? Because those are the
Yeah.
appropriate threat. And, when I was looking at hit points, because this is, again, we're very 5th edition in our hit point usage, and I'm like a health abstraction guy. It read to me like the hit points in this system aren't meat points like sometimes they would be described. It's more of that heroic interpretation of their grazes and flesh wounds, and it's when you're reduced to 0
Yeah,
that you're more,
absolutely.
because it's not like, despite a villain having 80 hit points, they're not just sitting there like absorbing bullets per se, right?
Yeah.
It's not,
Yeah.
that's not the fiction that hit points are meant to be facilitating, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, in D&D you often describe like every sword cut on the dragon is like carving a piece out, but that's not
Yeah.
not the vibe so much with this one, right?
Yeah.
It's more of that plot armor, heroic or villainous conviction, that sort of thing. Yeah, so you wouldn't like describe riddling the big bad guy with 100 bullets over 4 turns per se.
No,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. But we again, not trying to stray too far. We kept it to hit points,
yeah,
just to, rather than just like have been other games, and Spycraft was very similar to this, where it had like a different then set of like vitality and a different set of those kind of like hero point, like
yeah, yeah.
hero plot
There's a
armor
lot
kind
of
of thing.
nuance, a ton of different variations one could use, right?
Yeah, yeah. But
It's
I
just,
wanted to keep it simple.
yeah, yeah. You wanted to, because really you could take a lot of these threats and you could use them in a D&D game, honestly. They're not going to be quite lining up balance wise like the difficulty versus CR, because like I said, firearms and so forth, but the familiarity there, like you could run it. It's not like you have to learn a new way of playing the game or tracking health to use these. Like I said, you could pick this up and run it with your regular D&D group with almost no
Yeah,
prep, right?
definitely.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, one of the things that were kind of I remember coming up as questions during the first Kickstarter campaign, was like, oh, can I use like D&D monsters with this? So they're like, fighting they're like fighting supernatural
Yeah,
creatures
like
or
urban
monsters or
arcana
something.
style. Yeah.
Yeah, and we were like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Like the damage things might not quite track out,
It's close
but
enough.
yeah, they
Yeah.
they share the rule set
I
kind of
mean, that'd be a
DNA.
really
So
fun
yeah,
twist,
absolutely.
right? Like in a spy
Yeah,
session, like
yeah,
you're
yeah,
playing multiple sessions of spy game, and it's very mundane, but then the facility that you go down to has these weird experiments, and there's monsters. They open, you could jump the shark if you wanted to in your own game,
yeah,
into
exactly.
fantasy. Yeah. Well, and the way that the threats are organized, it communicates to you how tough they are, even though most of them are people. If you see
Mm,
a rent-a-cop, a security guard, the player instinctually will know probably not as tough as when they see, like a guerrilla fighter, right? You know, just that
yeah,
they'll instinctively know, even if they can't see the stat blocks, one is probably tougher than the other, or the villain in the suit with a black cat is probably the real deal,
yeah,
that everybody's taking orders from, even
mhm,
if in a way that sometimes D&D, I think, struggles to communicate to the player by body alone, because there's CR5 small creatures, right? Little guys, but they're
yeah,
supernaturally very tough in a way that isn't always easy to read. But like an ambassador versus a bodyguard, right? You'll expect one to be much better at combat than the other, just
yeah,
using your human knowledge of
yeah.
how that works. And so, have you found that new players kind of grok that pretty quickly when you're running it.
Yeah, definitely. But then again, I found that if you put together someone who like is really tough, like a kind of like ultimate like bodyguard or something like that, that it can get a little bit gonzo, kind of like down towards the end. It's like, how is this guy still
Yeah,
up? Like
that's in the
again, they
movies
they
too,
feel
right?
like yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Like
the
they
the
feel
big
like they've riddled him with bullets
yeah.
and stuff,
It's
and
always that like
it
the
gets
big guy comes out, right? Who's not, or it's the what is it? The trope called the dragon. He's like the one guy before the big boss. He's like the right hand man,
yeah,
like
yeah,
Jaws. I always think of
yeah,
Jaws because I love like that era James Bond. But Jaws is way tougher than any of the other
yeah.
cronies that Bond will encounter. And you can tell right away because he's a head taller than everybody with his metal teeth, and that communicates quickly. Oh, and Twice Dead Mage, I say howdy. What did I miss? So we are talking about Spy Game, which is a role-playing game built off the bones, the skeleton, I should say, of D&D 5e, but with a lot of changes for the genre. And we have the creator of that game, Samantha, here, and so that's what we've been sort of talking about. It's always really interesting when you are working with an existing structure, but then
Mm.
what you change and what you keep, right, is a tough choice. Like how much familiarity do you want to sacrifice for the sake of, say, genre, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I said, I tried to keep as much as I could and not
Yeah.
change anything just kind of for the sake of it. So the changes that are there are definitely to make sure that the genre fits. Um, and I don't know what it is about the process, but I've always found that um, working either with people on their ideas in development with them, or again working off a kind of existing structure like fifth edition's SRD, to be kind of easier than trying to come up with my own
Yeah.
mechanics, right? And then like because you also get things where it's like be chatting to like a young designer, an armchair designer, they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm coming up with my own new and innovative system, and it has strength, dexterity, constitution, and I'm like, oh please, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
that
it's
already exists, please design something else.
right. Well, and it's really tough when you do try to design something new. I talk to a lot of aspiring designers and hobbyists. And
Mm,
for example, you can spend weeks, months just on what dice to use, right? Like it can be
yeah,
quite a struggle. And that's why it's really popular to base things off of, say, D&D or Morkborg or Blades in the Dark.
yeah,
Or, you can use these games with very permissive SRDs or licenses
mm,
so you're not reinventing the wheel, right? Just to end up
yeah,
with a wheel at the end anyway, right?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, that makes sense. Oh, and Twice did to answer your question, what type of spy? So, because you came in a little late, this is to put it most succinctly, it's Mission Impossible, is what this is going for. It is the spycraft of tomorrow was the phrasing, which I really liked that Samantha said. So, could you be the spy from Team Fortress 2? I believe absolutely. We were gushing over the face class, and much of what the spy
yeah,
does
yeah,
is
for
assume
sure.
identities. And with that
Yeah,
master of disguise, you could be like,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So yes, you could be the spy from TF2, and yeah, you could immediately play as a character like that in the game with cover identities and so forth. But it is like Team Fortress, Twice Dead. This is, at the end of the day, has a combat phase to it in which the sirens are
hmm
going off and you have to fight your way out. And
yeah,
so I did notice that the face isn't a combat specialist, but they can still, use like pistols, right? Like,
yeah.
it's not
You're
like
still a
they,
spy.
yeah, you're still a spy. It's not like what third edition D&D wizard, well, I've only got 4 hit points and I'm out of spells, so I guess I pull out a crossbow to shoot ineffectively for the rest of the session, right? Like you
Yeah,
can you're still
yeah,
a trained spy agent,
yeah,
and can pull out your gun. Well, and I noticed that some of the abilities can be used in a combat
hmm
situation from the face as well, to misdirect and confuse and so forth.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to make sure there was enough on kind of both parts of the game.
Yeah, exactly. Because, and like we were saying at the start, even something as simple as how you handle the initiative structure is a small change, and it's not like it's wildly different, but that small change matters,
Mm.
right,
Yeah,
for the vibe of it.
exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
oh, and just not retread too much Twice Dead because we did cover it extensively. So the big reason for 5e is familiarity, right? It's something
Yeah.
that everybody knows, and what having read the core rulebook, it is the kind of thing that if you've played almost any edition of D&D, honestly, from third up probably, you could sit down and play this right away because it's instantly familiar, and the changes from it are subtle but impactful. Is maybe how I would describe that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, a big part of it is familiarity because Samantha is a say a tabletop business professional, right? It works in the
Yeah.
industry, and so
Yeah.
when you're making a product to produce for the public in some form, you have to make business decisions as well, right? Do you base it off an existing system for the connection you can provide to that and the familiarity? Do you start your own? These are all very relevant when you do decide, I'd like for people to buy this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And there are so many things that go into not only that decision making, but also just the development process of like developing it to into a product.
Yeah.
Um, and we knew from because I knew kind of deep down really that like this is something I wanted to publish,
Yeah.
even at at the very beginning of starting to write it. Like the secret was I didn't tell anybody. So because I feel like if you tell someone you're writing something or you're making something, you get a little bit of the same kind of endorphins as like completing
Yeah.
something
Smart.
for it,
Hmm.
and so you like kind of don't you end up not doing it.
Yeah.
um
Endorphins gained. I'm done.
yeah, but
Yeah.
actually like doing something like designing a role-playing game and then laying out a role-playing game and then marketing that role-playing game and then like figuring out the printing of that role-playing game, like it all takes like diligence and effort. And you know uh, so many of us, I mean, I'm lucky enough to work for a tabletop company
Yeah.
as my day job, but so many um, of aspiring designers or even designers in their own right in the space, well known, still hold down a different day job. This is still
Yeah.
something they do in their evenings. So all of this work and all of this effort that we put in is when we're tired and we
Yeah.
might be pissed off from work or something. And you know, you got to work out what you're going to have for dinner, and like you've got to feed the cat, and like so there's all these other
Yep.
things going on, and then you've still got to sit down in
Yeah.
front
Be
of a blank
creative, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
in front of a blank piece of paper on like Word or something
Yeah.
and start trying to like put things down on paper.
I feel that very much as somebody who has to do pretty much all the work between 8 p.m. and midnight,
Yeah,
for this sort of thing. The rest of the day is
exactly.
normal life, we might say. So yeah,
Yeah.
I definitely feel you. And Twice Dead, and it's all good that you came in late. And for clarity, what we talked about at the start, Samantha does work at Modifius, and so she's working in the industry with Modifius currently, and so yeah, she has a lot of knowledge about that. Oh, and I see that you're asking, is there something you would like to talk about? We're only a little bit less than 10 minutes left on our scheduled time. Flew by very
Yeah,
quickly,
yeah.
but Twice Dead's asking, are there things you'd like to bring up or mention about this project or the design of it?
Um I definitely think that we probably kind of moved on a bit too quickly. I think I moved on a bit too quickly in the games that we were working on and
Hmm.
designing. Um, that I really wish that actually I'd kind of put this to paper earlier,
Hmm.
um, and really kind of started off that kind of publishing of a supplement earlier,
Oh, yeah,
um,
specifically for the
for the spy
Spymaster's
game.
toolkit, right?
Yeah, for Spymaster's Toolkit, because we, like I say, we fulfilled like 2021,
Hmm.
so it's now like 4 years later. People still pick it up, and we're still able to get to those people that were interested in the game the first time around. But it's definitely trickier having that period of time after it
Right. You
before we've
can't
kind of been able
ride.
to get this.
Yeah, you're not riding the hype wave, so to speak, right?
Yeah,
As much.
exactly. But
Yeah, that
equally,
makes
the
sense.
perspective it's kind of given me has like also enabled me to, I think, do quite good work and
Hmm.
actually establish like what do we want to cover in this supplement. And again, because James and I come from a producing background, it's very much like we have 128 pages. Like we don't have more than that,
Yeah, you
so it
know
has to
exactly.
fit. Yeah, we
Yeah,
know about like folios in a book and stuff like this, and the kind of costs involved and stuff like that. So it's
yeah. Well,
like,
and your first game is incredibly like it's well produced, right? It's very
yeah,
professional,
thank
very well
you.
structured. It does not come off amateurish, right? Of course, which is a really hard part of design, honestly, because a lot of game
Yeah.
designers, aspiring game designers, they are good at creating systems, maybe,
Hmm.
but
Yeah.
that's only one part of the entire skill set that's needed if you're doing it alone to actually
Yeah.
make a game, right? It's very
Yeah.
hard.
If you're doing it alone, you need to be like a product manager, a designer, a writer, an editor, a proofreader, a graphic designer, a
Yeah.
marketeer. Like you have to be all of these things, and it's just the toughest thing in the world. It's why I'm
Yeah.
so grateful that I work with James and Susie on this stuff,
Yeah.
because we lean into and we can pull on each other for different things. Susie, being pretty much like our art director and artist on the books as well. She's got stuff in the original Spy game. She's got stuff coming up for the
Mm-hmm.
Spymaster's Toolkit, and effectively our marketing like manager. And then James, obviously designing, really incredible writer, is a great editor with my stuff, but is also again like me a producer
Right.
and knows the kind of business side of things, the considerations we need to have when it comes to like thinking about the game we want to make next, or a book we want to publish,
Right.
or a one-shot PDF we want to do. And so yeah, it's really really helpful to have a little team around you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But like actually I think in terms of starting out in design and stuff like that, I think my biggest piece of advice would be like just get it to the table.
That's
Get it to
good
the
advice. Yeah.
table so much earlier than you think you can. Um like you honestly, you can write something like on the back of a napkin and you can get it to the table,
Yeah. Get
because
out
I
your dice.
guarantee,
Yeah.
yeah, because I guarantee that within 5 minutes you'll find something you need to change.
Yep.
Like it's always the case. But when I have spoken to designers who are just kind of starting off, or even designers who have maybe been designing themselves, like kind of armchair designers for a
Yeah.
while, who aren't published yet or are looking to self-publish and stuff, and it's like, oh, I've got my first kind of draft of a game or whatever it's like, and here's my 50-page manuscript, and I'm like,
Yeah.
you didn't get, and it's not been to the table yet, and it's like you need to get to that to the table after like page 2.
Oh,
Like,
100%. Yeah. I've definitely encountered that as well, where people have written 100 pages, right? And they
yeah.
haven't actually sat down and played it. And I always say, like, you're going to be rewriting all 100 of those pages, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
just,
definitely.
yeah, like you said, the first 5 minutes, the first time a player needs to roll dice to determine something that happens in your game, you're gonna see something you need to change. It's it's
Yeah.
so different being up here sitting in the armchair imagining a game and then actually having
Yeah.
to have people play it,
Yeah.
let alone letting other people run it, which is a later, right? That's a further
Absolutely.
step, of course. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, test
Well,
early, test often. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. But like, in this hobby, we are so lucky in a sense that it's very easy to go from being a GM to imagining how like a little game
Mm,
mechanic or a game system might play out, because
hmm.
we've been in all those situations.
Yeah.
So it's really easy to get there. So it's like an old colleague of mine kind of really kind of talked me through this, and it makes a lot of sense that if you kind of plot out on a graph like the amount of people engaged in something like music, it's incredibly easy to listen to music. You do not need to be skilled to listen to music and appreciate
Yeah.
music. And there's a ton of people doing that. And then there's more people, but not as many, who can maybe like kind of play an instrument or sing, or they do something, or like, they're in an amateur choir and they
Right.
enjoy that kind of thing. Um, and they're all right at it, right? They're kind of hobbyists at it.
Hmm.
But then actually to play in like an orchestra
Mm.
takes like years of what, decades of practice and skill
Hmm.
and ability and talent to be able to do that thing, and then to go on to then like what, write music or like
Yeah,
conduct an
write the
orchestra again.
orchestra, yeah, or write
Yeah,
the opera or what have you. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's like so much further along in terms of like the skill set and the understanding that you need.
Hmm.
Whereas in our hobby, like the bar from like player to GM, well, arguably now to watching Critical Role
Sure.
to player to GM to designing a game, like that's not much of a jump, in all honesty.
Yeah. And it's so, I love the almost egalitarian aspect of it that anybody can
Mm,
open up a Word document, right?
yeah,
And write something, or just write on a piece of paper a couple rules, make a handmade character sheet, and you've got a game you
yeah.
can play now, right? I think that's really cool.
And we've built the tools too to publish it really easily.
Yeah.
Like you could decide on some nice font styles in that Word document, and you could make that a PDF, and you could sell it on
Boom.
Drive-Thru RPG tomorrow.
Yep, there it is. You
Like
could do
we've
pay
made
what you
such a
want or something, or pay a
exactly,
dollar,
yeah.
or yeah.
And it's given us such a vivid like community of
Yeah,
like design work and games to
absolutely.
try out, that it's given us some like real gems
Yeah,
as
and we
well.
get such, and why I love crowdfunding. What crowdfunding at its
Mm.
best. I know some folks are jaded with crowdfunding because very large businesses also crowdfund, and so it can be hard to notice the small campaigns. But I always cite like the most niche products get funded too, though. I love in tabletop, like I love citing Thirsty Sword Lesbians as an example.
Yeah.
Like you could not find maybe a more niche product or
Mm.
to be sold, and that made gangbusters. Like it did great, and so we get all these different voices and perspectives and the weirdest games, all because the
Mm.
community can vote with their dollars for them to exist. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think
I
that's so
think
cool.
that I think that that is unfortunately changing though,
Hmm.
particularly in the kind of crowdfunding landscape. That and even big businesses are finding this, I think,
Yeah.
as well. That Kickstarter, I think, like, it's my hot take for you.
Yeah, no, please hit us with
I'm
hot
sure
takes. Yeah.
I'm gonna post on LinkedIn soon. But my hot take for you is that like Kickstarter has a discovery problem now.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
it used to be amazing for that kind of thing, but now like you don't really see much organic discovery of your
Yeah.
stuff. People aren't really browsing it anymore. So what the campaigns that are successful have either been marketing for a very long time before they even
Hmm.
launch the campaign, or they are activating an already existing
Yep.
audience, like Critical Role going into Darrington Press. Like
Right.
they've activated an audience and they have a big community that they can draw on and make millions of. Um,
Right.
the
Yeah.
the other author whose name I forget, but doing the Cosmere stuff.
Oh,
Um,
Sanderson.
yeah, yeah,
Sanderson.
yeah,
Yeah.
Brandon Sanderson has both a reputation for launching stuff on Kickstarter and also like so his audience know where that is going to be,
Right.
and like secondly again has a huge audience that he can just activate and go, this is the RPG for my world, here it
Hmm.
is, and no wonder it makes 10
Yeah,
million
all the
plus,
money in the world. Or
because
Matt
like
Colville, right, who was already a wildly successful
yeah,
YouTuber and
yeah,
home brewer for making D&D products, right, when he makes his
yeah,
own game. Well, and that's a big reason why to talk, we'll go slightly over time here. Well, it's a big reason why I wanted to start doing these interviews using my
mm,
humble platform in a way that can get indie designers a little bit of,
yeah,
you know, I'll put quotes around like free advertising, I guess you could say. It's like, let's talk about a game. Let's look at an indie designer and what they're making. Because as you well know, marketing is an incredibly expensive endeavor, right?
mm,
You
yeah,
got to shove a ton of money and or time into it to
yeah,
get things out of it.
yeah,
And I find a lot of marketing very noisy and actually uninformative. And so I
mm,
like actually getting to like, what this is the kind of content I want to watch when I want to buy something, is I want to see
yeah,
the
of course,
designer, like, let's talk about it and see
yeah,
what's up. So that's very cool. So we're a little bit over time now, so we'll have to wrap up because this is during my day job, my day job
yeah, of
hours.
course, yeah,
But I just want to thank you so much, Samantha, for reaching out about
yeah,
your
of course.
game and joining me today. it's a great pleasure of being a small content creator like I am, that I get to talk to people like you and to hear about your games and do what I can to put more eyes on them. And so just to remind everybody who is watching live or on the recording, there is a link to the Kickstarter page for Spy Game. It's an expansion, though. This is a supplement to the original game, which is already available. There are links to that game and to everything on this Kickstarter page. And yeah, take a look at it. It's very cool. It's built off of 5e as skeleton, but with a ton of very smart and impactful changes to its structure. So yeah, take a look. Please do. And Samantha, is there anything else you'd like to mention? Any other places people should go and look to find out more about your projects?
You can find me around the internet at RPG Webby. You can find us, Black Cats Gaming, around the internet either at Follow Black Cats, which is what we are on Twitch, or Black Cats Gaming around the internet elsewhere. We do stream as well on Follow Black Cats Twitch channel. Monday nights we're playing Fallout 2D20 at the moment.
Cool. Yeah.
Which I also helped produce and design. But it's a Modiphius game. Yeah, aside from that, we're kind of playing video games occasionally
Yeah.
on the channel.
Yeah, the Venn diagram of TTRPG and video game nerds is a circle.
Yeah.
It's one circle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you said, in terms of the best thing of supporting us right now is going to the Kickstarter, and you can get all of the old Spy Game material too that is already published in that Kickstarter too. So even if you're new to the game, you can jump straight in and get the material very, very soon. Obviously, the Spymaster Toolkit is in work, so it'll be a little bit longer.
Yeah. As is, there's not a huge production team behind it already, having made it, right? Like in some big productions.
Yeah, no, it's the three of us and the cat. So
yeah, and the cats probably harm just as much as they help with the productivity, right? Well, good stuff. Well, thank you again, Samantha. We'll close it here, and thank you all who are watching either live or afterward on the stream. Catch you all later.
Thank you. Bye.